In this video, I'm going to share with you how to practice cut time so that you're not just thinking of it in a fast 4, and how you can build up from starting in 4 to actually truly feeling it properly in cut time. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at quickstartclarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. To get started, let me briefly explain what cut time is, and probably the more interesting question, why does cut time even exist? So what cut time is a specific time signature, and it's more or less a shorthand for the time signature of 2-2. 2-2 would mean 2 half notes per measure, which you might be thinking is exactly the same as 4-4, because in 4-4 there's 4 quarter notes per measure. 4 quarter notes are equivalent to 2 half notes. So why is there a difference, and why does it matter? I think the reason why it exists is because of composers and conductors being a little bit lazy. So on the conductor side, if you're playing a piece in 4-4 and it's going really, really fast, like maybe thinking of a march or something like that, then the conductor is going to be waving their arms like crazy, so it becomes easier for them to just conduct 2 half notes rather than 4 quarter notes per measure. So there's a little bit of easiness for the conductors. Also, it's a little bit easier for the composers as well, because you might think, okay, well, if the conductor's tired of beating in 4, why not just write it in 2-4? Well, for the composer, if you write it in 2-4, then it means an extra bar line on everything. A measure of cut time could be 2 quarter notes and 4 eighth notes, where you get 1 and 2 E and A. If you write that in 2-4, then you have to beam together the eighth notes, and you have to add an extra beam on the eighth notes to make them 16th notes. So it becomes a little bit more challenging, especially back in the day when everything was handwritten. So those are the main reasons for why it exists. Why not just do it in 2-4? And there's also a very important and significant musical interpretation to it as well. If you think about if you're beating in 4-4, it becomes very beaty and can get kind of heavy, whereas in 2-4, there's kind of a bigger beat structure to it, and it has better flow to it. So let's look at a wonderful cut time etude that is written by the fantastic Dr. Kristen Denny Chambers. This is First Flight from her Finger Fitness Etudes Book 1. If you don't have any of the Finger Fitness Etudes books, you are absolutely missing out and should check them out at clarinetplayground.com. But First Flight is a great one that's in cut time and will work well for what we're talking about today, which is how to actually practice something in cut time and get it figured out. So when you're looking at this piece at first, it's really tempting to just start counting it in 4-4. And I've worked on this with students before, and a lot of them will do that and not even notice the cut time because it's just so intuitive to count this in 4-4. And you look at the first measure and think, okay, a measure of eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And it works out fine. And when you're first learning this and getting familiar with the notes, you probably do need to go about that slow, and it's not a problem. However, if we're going very fast and doing this flying with ease and momentum, it's probably something more like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when it's so beady like that, it doesn't sound like it has a lot of ease and momentum to it. That's why cut time is important and where cut time is going to be helpful. So the way to practice this is start with that slow 4, and you can maybe even start doing it in 4-4 and learning it in 4-4. Maybe. The one thing that I would encourage you to do, no matter how slow you need to go with the metronome, is to always be counting in cut time, which is going to feel weird, and you're going to think, well, if I have the metronome clicking 1, 2, 3, 4, shouldn't I just count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and again, yes, you can start that way, but it's going to be better for you if you start 1 E and a, 2 E and a. So you're starting to get a feel for that. So the first thing that I would recommend doing is making sure that you're actually counting 1 E and a, 2 E and counting it in cut time. Even on the long notes, it's 1 and 2 and 1, 2, so that you're really truly keeping track of all of the counts in cut time. And what that's going to do for you is help you to make that transition. But to start out, the first way that I would practice this is counting it all out in cut time with the metronome counting in 4. And let's actually skip ahead to another section that's going to be a little bit more challenging and have some different rhythms that we have to check out. So starting here at measure 19, I'm going to start by writing in the counting so that we're really clear on how we're actually counting it in 2/4, or 2/2 cut time technically. And then once we have that counting solidified, we can actually do it with the metronome, and we're going to start with the metronome in 4. So we'll have that slower, steady beat going. Again, what that steady beat is doesn't matter. However slow you need to go, I'm going to go with 80. And that click of the metronome is our 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So that's where the metronome is actually clicking as we're hearing it right now. So we can then do this counting with that metronome click. So go ahead and sort of feel that pulse, and then let's try those few measures. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 E and a 2, 1, 2, 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So hopefully that was relatively manageable, and again, that's not so difficult to do that because it's going slow enough. We're more or less feeling it in 4, but we have that cut time counting to lay the foundation of eventually doing this in cut time. So that's step 1, is with the metronome in 4, counting in cut time. Now for step 2, we're going to count in cut time with the metronome going in 4, but we're going to add tapping our foot in cut time as well. So I'm going to erase these. The metronome will still be clicking these beats that I'm erasing now, but our foot is going to be tapping the counts that are not erased. So our foot's going to be tapping 1, 2, 1, 2. We're going to be counting the written rhythm in cut time, and the metronome is going to be giving us the 4/4 or in cut time 1/8 note pulse. So there's the metronome, and let's give this a try, and I'm going to snap my finger where your foot should be tapping. So get that pulse going, 1 and 2 and tapping on 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Now let's count it. Ready and go. And 1 E and a 2, 2, 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. So that's step 2. Now moving on to step 3, we're going to have the metronome kind of reinforce that counting that we're doing. So using the 4-score metronome, instead of having it on 1, which I almost always just leave my metronome on 1, so it's just clicking a continuous steady beat, I'm going to turn it on to 2/4. You could also turn on the 1/8 note subdivision, would also work. But what we're looking for is a stronger emphasis to the beats on 1 and 3 in 4/4, or 1 and 2 in cut time, with the ands being de-emphasized. So we have that strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. And we're still going to tap our foot now with the accent. Tap, tap, tap. Let's give this a try. And ready and go. And 1 E and a 2, 2, 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. So that's step 3, having the metronome reinforcing it. As you're going through steps, even step 1, 2, 3, really all of the steps, you can also be increasing the tempo, because eventually it's going to be going so fast that it will be very beneficial to feel it in cut time, but we're kind of building up that foundation. Now the last step is to kind of take the training wheels off of the metronome. I'm going to go back to feeling it in 1, but now instead of going 80 for the quarter note, I'm going to switch to the half note pulse. So instead of 80, it would be half of that, 40 for the pulse that we were tapping our foot to. So if we give that a listen, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and that's the tempo that we were going before, but now it's actually counting in cut time and the metronome's clicking in cut time as well. So let's give that a try. Ready, go. 1 E and a 2, 2, 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 and 1, 2. And now you're fully doing it in cut time with counting in cut time, foot tapping in cut time, metronome in cut time, and playing the rhythm in cut time. Now you may have noticed with the metronome going at 40, it was a little bit challenging to predict when that next click was because there was so much space in between. And that's why having these different methods of building up to feeling it in cut time can be really beneficial. If I was going that slow on this, I would probably still keep the metronome clicking those ands and clicking the subdivisions. If you watched my video last week, you saw where I explain when to use the subdivisions and when to switch from a quarter note subdivision to an eighth note subdivision in a 4/4 piece. This is an example of, in a cut time piece, it is still helpful to have the 4/4 subdivision to have those inner clicks and to anchor into it because it's going so slow. So use methods 1, 2, and 3 to gradually build up the tempo. And once you're at about 120 in 4/4, so 60 for the half note in cut time, then it will be more comfortable to switch the subdivision over and start really fully feeling it in cut time with the metronome in cut time. The other cool thing about this is it gives you a little bit more to latch onto in your slow practice as well, where you can be doing the slow practice and gradually increasing your tempo and you're like, woohoo, I made it up to 120 in 4/4, but maybe the goal is 120 in cut time, so 120 for the half note rather than 120 for the quarter note. But it's cool because you incremented your way up to 120 for the quarter note. Now you can sort of jump back down to 60 for the half note and then keep building up from there with 60 at the half note. So hopefully this gives you some ideas for how to practice cut time more effectively and how to make the transition from counting in 4/4 to actually counting in cut time. If you have any questions about this at all, definitely let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the Quick Start Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.